got this old server box, and inside is an Asus motherboard and a Pentium 4, I'm pretty sure. A 3 gig Pentium 4. I mean, like, it's just old hardware. And my intent is to take out the insides and put them into a newer case and essentially do like a reverse of Sleeper Machine, where, I mean, it's not exactly a new concept. Other people have done it too. I just happen to have some hardware here and a case over here, and I thought maybe we'll see what we can do with it. Let's take a look. Okay, so over here we've got your DVD-ROM. It's got a writer in it. Some extra bays. These might be hot swappable HD. These may be hot swappable hard drive bays, perhaps. But if they get a look inside, you got your floppy there. Indicator lights with a reset switch. Let's get a look here. Another reset switch. I wonder what this reset switch goes to. Oh, I know. Okay. This is a fan. This goes to the fan. I imagine that this goes to the fan controller on the inside. That these will turn that fan on or off according to a temperature inside. There's probably like a thermocouple in here, I imagine. Let's take a look inside. Now, I've already started to pull the screws off, so we can save some time there. But I'm going to need to put the phone down for just a moment. Here's the back. Here's the back side. So what we got here? Oh wow, I haven't seen a graphics card with a composite on it in quite some time. Wow, that's actually really cool. I actually pulled out some hardware out of this once before. But when I did that, I didn't really get a chance to completely look this whole thing over. So that's why the screws are already off. This is one of the things. This is one of the cards that came out of it. It's like a capture device of some kind with S-video in, S-video out. Audio in, audio out. And I looked this up online. There are a couple available on eBay. And here oh yeah, okay, so that's interesting too. So these are the pieces that were in here. Alright, so now this is the first time I'm actually getting the lid completely off and actually looking over the whole thing. The first time I just pulled out the cards because I wanted to know what that capture card was and what it looked like, and I wanted to check it out, like on the internet. But So yeah, this is new for all of us here. Yeah, like I said, Asus motherboard. Intel, I believe that would be a Pentium 4 underneath that. It could be a Core 2. It's possible, but I'm pretty certain that this is a Pentium 4. I mean, it's got some pretty updated-ish I/O. I mean, updated-ish. I mean, it's got a brown motherboard, but it does have the SATA, DDR2 RAM. So, I mean, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. See, there we are. There's the fan controller. Right here. And let's see. Let's see here. Oh yes. Right here. There's the thermocouple. Very interesting. So essentially, this fan would turn on and off according to the temperature automatically. Pretty sweet. I imagine that was done for silence, because this is a rack, and I believe it came out of some sort of studio office. I don't remember exactly anymore. I just know what I was told about it when it was given to me. So that's how I knew it had an Asus motherboard. At least I thought so from who told me about it. And like I said, I had only popped it open a little bit to access these. I hadn't actually pulled the entire case off to get a real good look inside. So let's see here. That floppy is not connected. Okay. I wonder why they left it in. It's not connected. The DVD drive is not connected either. Interesting. And let's see. Any hard drives in here? Oh yes, there is in fact a hard drive down here. No, actually there are 2 hard drives here. And you know what's interesting is nothing is connected. Maybe they thought it was broken, and that's why they were getting rid of it, because nothing's connected in here. Alright, oh, I guess I'm going to pull things out of this and get back to you with, I don't know, slight updates. I can't hold the phone and take things apart, so I guess these videos will be done in increments to see how this all goes. Thanks for watching. Okay, so here's some progress. It's empty. I'm going to leave the floppy drive in there because there's really no point in taking it out, and leaving the original setup here for maybe a future build or something. Excuse me. So what do we have in there? Asus motherboard here. Takes DDR2 RAM. Has 2 PCIe slots, PCIe 1, PCIe 16, 3 PCI slots, and pretty decent pretty decent back I/O. Not so bad actually, just for an older motherboard, that is, and it has a whole lot of expansion. I mean, ridiculous. We've got 2 SATAs here, 2 SATAs there, 2 IDEs, and another IDE here. And there, of course, is the floppy. So this thing can hold a whole lot of storage. It's kind of amazing. So basically what I'm going to do is try to find out if this thing turns on, if this motherboard still works. And, oh yeah, also it comes with what I believe is an NVIDIA graphics card, also by Asus. Asus ribbon. And cooling master power supply has LEDs in it. It's probably blue. And there's that front chassis I'll be sticking back in. And take that out, test it, and put this back inside. And we'll store this away or something. See what's up. I don't know. But yeah, anyways, that's where we're at so far. Hi again. Okay, so here's an update to that last video I took on this motherboard here. It's a socket 775 motherboard, and it has a Pentium 4 3 gig in it. And it originally came with 512 megabytes of RAM. Both were 256 sticks, some Corsair sticks. I forget what they were, but they're like Corsair gaming sticks. Old ones though. Again, they only had 512 megabytes on them total. And, you know, this would have been running like Windows XP or something like that. Anyhow, when it was given to me, it was inside a server case, and the person told me they weren't sure what was wrong with it. I had opened up the back side of it and yanked out 2 cards just to get an idea of what the cards were, because I was curious of what they were, and hadn't really gotten fully into it, the entire case yet. So this here is the motherboard outside of the case. If you didn't see the first video, you might want to check that one out to see what it looked like in its original state. Has an NVIDIA graphics card here. I don't remember what it is. An Asus ribbon. I mean, it gives you an idea. It gives you an idea of, you know, how old what we're dealing with here. But my intention is to upgrade the RAM to its maximum capacity. I think is 16 gigs. And I'm going to put a Core 2 Duo 3 gig in it, which is, from my understanding, will max out the motherboard. They told me that they didn't know what was wrong with it, and when I opened up the case, many of the internals were disconnected, like the SATA drives and things like that. But I believe that it works, and I'm going to do some testing as is, because even if that doesn't work, I can always get another motherboard just like it and use those parts in that one. But I'm fairly certain that this works, because I couldn't see any broken capacitors or bulbed capacitors or anything that indicates, you know, board failure. Although that doesn't necessarily mean that the board, you know, was having some issues, or maybe it was maybe if anything, it could have been that their operating system was having troubles and not the motherboard. It did have a Windows XP on the drive. It was a SATA drive, not even an SSD. So really, they could have been having trouble with the hard drive and not necessarily the motherboard. So my plan was to take this old motherboard and do like a retro build with it, upgrade it as much as possible, perhaps stick with this graphics card, maybe not. I might put a different one in. I mean, this one's kind of old. It actually has a composite out on it. So I may upgrade that graphics card to something a little bit newer. And I'm planning on sticking it inside this case here. I blacked out the back panel. It was originally silver. And I tried to do just Sharpie, and I tested the Sharpie on the back. You can kind of sort of see it's there, but it wasn't staying. It wasn't going to work, so I used a marker, a paint marker, because I didn't have any spray paint. And in order to get it to stick, I really had to kind of dab on it, and they really couldn't just kind of color with the marker. And I mean, there's even a few spots where I missed that I honestly don't care that much about, because it's going to be in the back of it anyhow. But I thought it would kind of it would look nicer in the back of the panel of this machine, of this case, blacked out as opposed to silver. So my intention here is to take that motherboard and put it into this case and do, I mean, something that, other people on have done it as well, but they basically, instead of doing a sleeper machine, it's like a sleeper in reverse where you take nicer stuff on, take an older motherboard, older internal components and make them look newer by adding newer hardware on the outside, like a nicer case, maybe a nicer power supply or RGB or whatever. And for me, I got a case here that's, honestly, I don't like these cases that much with these power supply basements, because it puts you in a position where if you don't have the right length of power supply, you're going to get extension cables or, whatever. Also, if there's a hard drive chassis down here, you have to be careful of how much power supply you stick in, because you want to have room for your cables, or in the power supply, of course. And this one happens to have one right about here or so, and it's riveted in. You can't take it out with with screws, and I don't want to drill them out. So I had to make sure I got the right size power supply, and I mean, it's really kind of a pain in the butt. I don't like these. Not a fan. If they were removable or something, I don't know. And I get the idea. I understand the purpose, but I don't like it that much. Anyhow, this budget case here has 3 green fans in the front and a green fan in the back. And I'm going to be putting some fans up here, some Corsair fans, and another one might be Rocket Fish or something. But there's 2 reds and 1 blue. And I'll might put like a blue LED strip in here or something, maybe. Just to do like the RGB thing. And these here are oh yeah, Rosewell. This one's blue, red Corsair, and these will be in the back, on the top rather, of that case. Trying to make this thing look all, pretty and stuff. So that's the update for now. I'll post more as this build comes along. Thanks for watching. Alright, so here's a quick update. I have moved that motherboard out of the old case. I installed a different heatsink, and this one lights up blue a little bit. This is an Asus GTX 550 Ti, which isn't like, it's not great. It's only got like 1 gig RAM, but again, this is going to be a reverse sleeper build. Putting older hardware into a newer case. I do have some fans that will populate the top area here as well, but I had to pull them out to get this in. And this is an Antec. This is an Antec cooler. It's only got like I think it's a 90mm fan on it, I think. But it's basically AMD ready with a bracket here for Intel. The issue is that in order to change the CPU out, you have to take off the entire bracket, all of this, to get to the CPU. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I thought this supported 8 gigs RAM. Turns out it's a maximum of 2. So the CPU that's in it isn't really worth being in here. I also, additionally, I misread the specifications for this motherboard, and the max CPU that I would want to put in here is a Core 2 Duo E6700. What's in here now is an E7600. And while it does work, like I can turn the computer on, and the motherboard recognizes that it's a 3 gig Core 2 Duo 7600, but I do get an issue like during boot up where it says, honestly I can't remember the name of the error now, but essentially what it needs would be a BIOS update. But I looked online and I couldn't find a BIOS update for this motherboard that seemed to be newer than what's already on here, and this and the CPU that's in here now is not on the supported list. So it works, but not really. So I'm gonna end up pulling that one out. Unfortunately, it's going to be a bit of a downgrade, but I do have an old Pentium D, 2.8 gig Pentium D that I can put in here, which would be plenty sufficient for the games that I instant installing on this anyhow. We're talking like old games, you know. You get a 1 gig VRAM for example, anyhow. And the idea here was to actually have an old school gaming system for like Duke Nukem or let's see, Doom, like the original Doom, or I don't know, just basically old games that this system will crush and run, flawlessly at like highest settings for those particular old games. I might try doing like a GOG box out of it, like, just to install as many GOG games that I have, because in here I do have quite a bit of storage available, and I'm also actually using one of them. There's a 60 gig 7200 PATA in there. Maybe it's a 5400. I don't remember anymore. But these are 7200s. Then you get the PATA, and this will be the boot drive here. I still have to redo all of the cabling because it took me a bit to like get access to all of this. So yeah, but that's where we are now. I have to essentially downgrade the CPU, but again, it'll be plenty fast enough for what I'm going to have installed on here anyways. Even this GPU is sort of overkill, the 550 Ti, for the games that I imagine most of the games that are going to get installed on here don't need more than a 32 to a 64, maybe 128 megabyte graphics card, so that'll be plenty fast enough as well without running out of any VRAM. I think the most intense game that might go on here that could potentially push this GPU to the max, and possibly the CPU as well, is Oblivion, especially if it was modded a bit. Yeah, that would definitely, put this machine to work. But other than that, primarily my intent is to install older games, as mentioned, but have it looking all blinged out with colorful fans and stuff like that. And what I've got going on here is 3 greens: red, blue, green, and I have a GPU cooler here that'll be blue, and I might put a red strip in here too, just to kind of balance it all out a bit. But yeah, it'll look nice. It's just not going to perform all that great, as in comparison to like much newer hardware. But for the day, back in the day, this would have been a killer system. Anyways, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you like these videos, give them a thumbs up, please. If you don't, you know what to do. And obviously feel free to comment. Are you doing any old builds? Do you have any old school hardware lying around you might do a build with? I don't know, let me know. Thanks for watching. Okay, so the CPU cooler is off. CPUs have been switched out. Now I've got the old Pentium D 820, I think it is, the 2.8 gig one, which again, like I said, will be fast enough for the really old games I intend on using with this older platform here. Here's the E6700, 7600 rather. So I got this for this motherboard, but this motherboard only supports up to the 6700, not the 7600. It was just a, I guess I read it incorrectly or something, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. It was a $5 chip. So whatever. But I had this one. It's in there now. I'm going to be installing this cooler on there. I mean, there's no overclocking on this motherboard or whatever, so this is going to be more than sufficient, and definitely better than the stock cooler that was on this motherboard. You can see that stock cooler on the other video, on the other earlier portions of this series here. So yeah, I'm about to install this and then finish up all the wiring and get it all going, and that'll be that. I did get myself a PCIe 3.0 for USBs for the front panel, because this motherboard doesn't have USB 3.0 for the front panel. I mean, it's pretty old. It actually has, you know, the IDEs on there. But does have an okay PCIe 2.0 X16, I believe it is. And even if it's an X8, it's still plenty. The graphics card that's going in there isn't really all that powerful anyhow. But yeah, this is it, kind of sort of bare. And like I said before, I put 4 sticks in here to make 8 gigs. And even though the BIOS can read 8 gigs, it actually tops out at 4. And instead of doing 4 individual 1 gig sticks, it's definitely better. I mean, most people probably know this by now, to have 2 sticks like this and run dual channel that way, as opposed to having to 4 1 gig sticks. It just looks kind of crappy with them open slots like that, but I might have a fix for that anyhow. I might get one of those CPU fan coolers that snaps over the top and you won't even notice. I'm not sure. I'll figure it out. Anyways, that's where we're at with that. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I've got the computer wired up. This is the back panel here. And so what we've got down here at the bottom is a SATA drive, and a PATA drive. Because, like I said, I'm mixing old to new, so I felt like having an old PATA drive in there makes sense. Plus, we get to make use of the ASUS cable. And matter of fact, even the SATA cable going to the SSD up here is also an ASUS SATA cable, so that's kind of neat. So what do we got down here is a 450 watt Cooler Master power supply. And here I have a SATA to Molex adapter, which is connected here. And that Molex adapter is connected to a VGA cooler, a graphics card cooler, on the other side. Got these 3 fans, 1, 2, and 3 in the front here, connected to a 3-way splitter. Goes inside here. Alright, so that's a look at the back side and the cable management. The only thing I don't like about this case is you don't really have a whole lot of space. If you have a bigger power supply, you'll run out of space in here. And you have to put your hard drives in before you stick anything else in. So if anything was to ever go wrong with these hard drives, you'd have to pull this power supply out, and most likely have to disconnect all of this wiring just to access a hard drive. Now, fortunately, I know that PATA drive in here works, so hopefully this combo mashup of old to new works out well with the older hard drive, and that there's no reason to have to access it anytime soon, because that would be terrible. So yeah, that's the back side of this. Can slide it around a bit here. Let's do the peel. A little bit of ASMR. Oh, that's a nice peel. Okay, so here's the front panel, the USB 3.0, and because it's an older motherboard, I actually had to use a USB 3.0 adapter for the front panel header. And you've got your regular USB 2s, audio mic, and headphones. Looks like a reset button here, power button. Yeah, that's a reset button. So over here on the side is something interesting. It looks like it's a port for what would have been USBs. Because like that little plastic thing I pushed in accidentally, and okay, so what it would have been is a switch, a fan speed switch, high and low, that for whatever reason was not installed on this, because right here we have a light, an LED switch. And on the opposite side of here, I did not see any line wiring for this. It was just these. So, yeah. Apparently there's another version of this case that has these filled in, or maybe that's an option that can be ordered or something. But I didn't bother to use them. The fans don't have a whole lot of breathing room here. I'm not exactly a fan of that, no pun intended. But I mean, even some of the little hole punch outs are actually filled in. Like, that's ridiculous. There should be, you know, maybe I may consider taking a drill and popping those out. I don't know. But I don't really like that. There's not a whole lot of fan space there. It almost makes me wish that I put the fans on the inside instead of leaving them stock. I mean, you might be able to get a look here. See? So, I mean, it looks like I could have moved them onto the inside of the case. It looks like there's enough room that I might have been able to do that. I almost kind of wish that I had. I may even consider doing that if I find that the thermals are just terrible. I don't know. It depends. So anyways, back to the front view here. Got the 3 fans. They're green. I can slide this again. Oh. Let's get to the other side of it. Okay, so here's the inside, and what I'm going to do is try and remove each corner. I'm doing this with one hand, so I'm most likely going to end up having to put the phone down to actually remove the glass. But what I'd like to see if I can do is at least access this peel here. So what we have is an old Asus motherboard with an Asus graphics card. It's a GTX 550 Ti, 1 gig. Down there is that graphics card cooler I was talking about. And let's see here. So I do not have the SATA cables connected right now, because when I go to install the operating system onto that drive over there with the sticker on it, I have noticed that Windows can be weird about installing and having other drives on there. For example, one time I left a PATA drive connected doing another, it looks like this one's not going to peel up. Oh, there it is. So anyways, I had done another old build using Windows 10 and some older hardware intentionally. And I left the PATA drive connected to the system. And even though I chose the main drive to install the operating system, Windows automatically, without me having anything to do with it, had installed the boot partition onto the pay to drive. And I don't know why it did that, but that's just what happens. So I notice now that, you know, it's actually better to just remove all your drives that you're not going to use before installing your OS. Saves you headaches. So yeah, that's something I learned. And I mean, honestly, in that particular build, it didn't seem to matter so much because it kind of made use of the drive, the pay to drive, because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I was considering just maybe using it as a like a, you know, an extra storage drive or something. I hadn't completely figured it out. And what ended up happening, like I said, is the operating system decided to use it, at least a small portion of it, and I just left it like that. All right, so here we are. I've got the four corners peeled away from the. I know that was probably boring to watch. I apologize. But all right, let's peel off this now. See, I can't do this with one hand, hold the case at the same time holding the phone, so we have to do small pulls. And it's actually pulling the case with it. Oh, all right. Go from this corner. Alright, there it is. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is take the side panel off, get another look inside, and then we'll connect it to a monitor and turn it on. Okay, so I pulled the front glass panel off here, and so the story about that sticker back there, by the way, is I didn't like the sticker that came on the drive. It looked terrible, and I tried to pull it off really nice and easy, so you couldn't see any like the residue from the sticker on there, you know, and I got most of it off, but somehow it just wouldn't clean off real nice. No matter what, I used like rubbing alcohol and whatever, like trying to like clean up the drive, and it just didn't look as nice as I wanted it to, so I ended up slapping this point blank sticker on there. And they're a band that came and played in town a couple of years ago. I had the opportunity to do a show with them. I promoted the show. I'm not in a band, but anyways, that's the story behind that sticker, and it was better than having the front of the drive looking all crappy. And so there's the USB 3 header adapter I was talking about that was required, and it actually needs a Molex, so good thing I had Molex on this power supply. I mean, it is an older power supply, so no surprise, but sometimes they're coming, you know, harder to find on power supplies, and you still need them. Fortunately, they do have SATA to Molex adapters like what's in the back I mentioned earlier. And there's the Antec cooler. Still have that Pentium D dual core in there. I would like to upgrade it to an E6700 or maybe like the Extreme Edition or whatever, just to like max out the CPU. And it has, now what I ended up doing was slapping in two 512s, so it has 5 gigs, even though the max RAM on this motherboard, from what the manual said, was it supported up to 4. However, the funny thing is, you know, when you go into the BIOS, it does show 5 gigs. When I had this populated to up to 8 gigs of RAM, it did show 8 gigs. But it looked as though it was only going to use 4 of the 8 gigs. And, you know, when you go into the BIOS, it does show 5 gigs. When I had this populated to up to 8 gigs of RAM, it did show 8 gigs. But it looked as though it was only going to use 4 of the 8 gigs. And, you know, when you go into the BIOS, it does show 5 gigs. But it looked as though it was only going to use 4 of the 8 gigs. So I took out those sticks and just put in two twos for 4, and ended up having 2 empty slots. So I had these two 512s sticking around, lying around, that were the same bus speed. So I slapped them in there just to kind of fill it out all out. So it's like wasting. I'm sort of like wasting a gig of RAM in a sense, because if the motherboard doesn't support more than 4 gigs, then it's not really going to use it. But again, it's 2 512 sticks. What else was I going to do with them? So now they're being used for show, essentially. I may get my hands on some old DDR gaming RAM sticks with heat spreaders on them, just for like to prettify it up a little bit. I mean, it's not really necessary. Underneath the PCB is the same for the most part. But I don't know. I might do that just to make it look a little nicer. So I'm using a flash on the camera. That's why it's so bright. Otherwise, I didn't think the light from the room itself would be bright enough to get a good look inside. And I will do a video with it all lit up. So here's a look on the inside. Completed. Completed as in, like, I still have to do the rest of the drives. Those are disconnected for this is all disconnected so that I can do the install up on here for Windows. Alright. I'll do a video, one final video of it all lit up and turned on soon. So I went to install Windows 10 on this machine using this flash drive here, and this machine doesn't like to boot off of, well, I shouldn't say doesn't like to, more like just doesn't boot off a USB. There's no way of setting that in the BIOS, and this case does not have, I mean, even though there are brackets here to have installed a DVD drive or like a 5.25 bay unit, like, you know, it's just install something in there. There's no, it's all closed off in the front. You know, there's no bay in the front there. So what I had done is I took this. I mean, it doesn't look great, but it's behind the drive anyways. I took this little like lip that was designed to hold the drive that you would put in there, and I took a hammer and a pair of pliers and just kind of bent it downwards and flattened it out some. And I did it on both of them here. Flattened them out. And it looks better on the inside of the machine, and also it gave me another place to put a drive. So instead of just having room for 2 drives, 1, 2, I now have 3. Because I mean, there was nothing else to stick up that you could stick up here anyhow, even if you wanted to. So that's what happened there. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. This motherboard doesn't boot from the USB like I thought it might. And so here I am connecting this way. That's how I'm going to be doing installing the OS. Excuse me. Okay, so I made a DVD of the newest version of Windows 10. We got this here connected. Let's power things back on again. And so to me, when I look at the phone taking the video, those look a little bit more. Well, now that the monitor turned on, it changed a bit. But initially, I saw more like a bluish green color, and I assume that's because of the blue graphics card in there. And we also got that CPU cooler, which is also blue. And what I did notice is that the 2 red ones at the front and in the back are washed out quite a bit by the green and the blue. So my plan is to get a red LED strip to just kind of balance it out some. And also, normally I wouldn't put, let's see here. In there. All right. Normally I wouldn't put a fan right here because it's so close to the front that front fan could just kind of suck the air out and right up before it ever reaches the CPU because it's pretty far away. Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's almost 2 fans right there that could just pretty much suck the air up and out. But the only reason why I populated it all like this is because I was looking to use up those fans, and I was trying to blend as much of our RGB as possible just by fans without using like actual RGB software and things like that. So yeah, again, I probably wouldn't normally in most cases have populated all of the front like that with there being that much of a gap between the front of the case and the CPU cooler. Especially one so small, I might actually be choking out some of that air. It is possible. Fortunately, the back is kind of close enough that it'll be doing somewhat of a push-pull, even though the fan isn't exactly right up against the even though the back fan isn't right up against the cooler. Okay, so here we are. The computer is working. I just got to install the operating system, and that's what we're about to do next. So long as everything just kind of works here. So drop in the DVD for Windows. Okay. So I mean, it does look kind of nice with the red-blue. I mean, even though it gets washed out a little bit, I'm just hoping to add a red strip. It will kind of make the reds pop out a little bit more. It looks like it might be going somewhere. Here we go. Alright, Windows 10 is installing. We'll be back when this is finished. Okay, well, I have not encountered this one before. So I'm trying to install Windows 10. The drive that I've had to connect this way because the motherboard doesn't want to boot from the USB. So I did it. So I'm doing it this way. I got a DVD in there. It was sitting there with the cursor blinking on a black screen for, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then this popped up. So yeah, I guess we'll be back again. Hopefully I can get Windows 10 installed on here. This is something new. Okay, so I think I know what the problem is with the install issue. You might see that I have 4 DIMMs in there, right? Okay, so here's the thing. For whatever reason, if I have 4 2-gig sticks in there, in the BIOS it actually shows 8 gigs of RAM. Right now I have 5 gigs in there, 2 2-sticks, and 2 512 sticks. And the 2 512 sticks I just threw in there to fill up 2 empty slots, thinking it wasn't really going to matter if the motherboard wasn't really going to use or access those sticks anyhow. But it turns out that this motherboard is very, very, very specific about it. One, apparently it doesn't support DIMMs with RAM on both sides, as opposed to RAM with just one-sided sticks. And the other thing is, actually, come to think of it, these extra ones that I threw in here, if I can just get it out of there, happen to be single slot. I mean, not single slot, excuse me, single-sided. If I could just get it out of this slot here. I didn't think this was going to be this complicated, and I think I actually unpopped the wrong one. I did. That's what the issue was. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so this has chips on both sides. This one, I have to pull them out to change them out anyhow. Wow, these are really in there. And actually, honestly, I didn't think this was going to be this difficult. I just don't want the chip to go flying down when I pop it out. Okay. And these are single-sided. Apparently, this motherboard only supports single-sided if you're using certain slots. And the other thing is that it only supports up to 1 gig modules in each slot. So technically I would have to have 4 1 gig sticks, all of the same timings and same densities, and I believe they all have to be single-sided, which is strange because in the list of supported RAM, it actually shows dual-sided, so I don't understand it really. Essentially, what I'm going to have to do is get different RAM for it. I do happen to have the default sticks. I say default. I mean the sticks that came with the motherboard, which are only 2 512 sticks, but they worked, and there was an operating system on this. This had XP on it. So I guess what I'm going to try doing is the ultimate bottleneck for right now and slap those 2 512s in there and see if I can't even get Windows 10 to install with 1 gig of RAM, which I kind of doubt, but maybe. I mean, it says supposedly that you can run this on 1 gig processor with so much RAM. I forget how much RAM it was now. Might have been 512. Maybe that was Vista. Honestly, I don't remember right at this moment. But that's what I'm going to try. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to get different RAM put in this. Okay. Okay, well, excuse me. Okay, well, it's still doing it. Happened a little faster this time, but it's still doing it. We've got 2 sticks of RAM in there, 512 megabytes each, so, you know, a gig of RAM, Corsair, 5400 C4. Those are the sticks that came with the machine. And now this is what we're getting while attempting to get Windows to install. So I don't know. I'll figure this out some way or another. I think what I might be able to do is I may actually try installing Windows on a different Intel machine and just see if that makes the difference. Because this is weird. Although I would actually like to see it install the operating system, to be honest. Alright, well, there we are so far. Failure. Okay, so in the very last video, I was having failure with this thing, and I tried all the different RAM slots, you know, like these two together, you know, and these two together. Also, I had thought this thing took 8 gigs of RAM. Even though the motherboard shows 8 gigs of RAM in the BIOS, supposedly, according to the manual, this only takes a maximum of 4 gigs, with populating across the board with 4 1 gig sticks. So that's weird. I don't know. Supposedly, also, it doesn't support 2 gig stick DIMMs as well. This is a very strange motherboard, because it also has other kinds of specifications about what it would work with as far as RAM is concerned. But this RAM here, this Corsair RAM right here is what came with it originally. It's only 512 sticks, 512 megabyte sticks, and you know, obviously 1 gig isn't really enough for much at all. It'll run Windows XP, sure, but that really wasn't what my intent was. I mean, even still, that's like for some of the really old games that I was considering slapping on this. Yeah, I mean, it's still enough RAM, whatever. I mean, whatever. Anyhow, I swapped back to the original graphics card as opposed to what was in here before, which was the GTX 550 Ti. The reason why I'm swapping back to this one is because I've realized that this motherboard does need a BIOS update. And in another video earlier, in a previous video, I had stated that I couldn't find the right BIOS for this, and that shortly after stating that, I ended up actually finding BIOS that go higher than what's on here now. The issue that I'm running into is that it will only update BIOS via a floppy. There's a little floppy connector down there. Okay, yeah. So that process poses me a bit of an issue of getting the updating the BIOS. It's a bit of a problem. So that being said, because of the particular BIOS that's on here, it doesn't even support the dual, the Pentium D 820. That even though that is in the specified list of supported CPUs, it still needs a BIOS update to even take this processor. So that's two processors I've tried in here that both show up in the BIOS but don't actually work properly. So now what I need to do is probably pull this entire motherboard out, slap it into a really old case, get it connected to a floppy, and attempt to update the BIOS and come back to this whole process. Yeah, so that's where we are here. What I'm going to do now is swap back the original CPU that was in here, the Pentium 4 3 gig processor. And I don't know, see if maybe once we've got that in, if I can maybe possibly get Windows 10 to install on here on a Pentium 4 just to see what happens. And then once I've gotten some success with this machine at the very least, then I'll worry about updating the BIOS and stuff like that. In this current configuration, once I put the old processor back in, and in that configuration with the hard drive that's here connected now, that's Windows XP, all basically with the original hardware coming out of that old case. If I can't boot into Windows then obviously there's an issue going on with the motherboard that maybe it's why they were trying to get rid of it. I don't know. Because here, like I said, I have been having some quote-unquote success with this motherboard. I mean, it does turn on. I do get into the BIOS. It reads the RAM. It reads the processor. So the only thing that comes to mind is clearly it needs a BIOS update. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is put the Pentium 4 back in, which means, of course, pulling this entire bracket off, because you can't even open this. You can't even open this up, like, you know, the latch, because this is in the way. So now I got to pull this whole thing off and put the old processor back in, the heatsink back on, and I can go from there. And I mean, that's the other reason why I put this original graphics card back in is because I know it works, and with a Pentium 4 processor, I really don't see the point in having a 550 Ti connected to it. I mean, there's going to be enough of a bottleneck already with the old hardware as it is. You know, 1 gig RAM, old Pentium 4. So, I mean, this 256 megabyte card, which I'm pretty sure that it is, it might be 128, but I think it's 256. Anyways, this card should be able to run some of those old games anyhow. And then I'll worry about updating the hardware, the motherboards, CPU, and the graphics card after I've gotten the BIOS updated, which again means pulling everything out of here, because there's no way for me to currently just slap one in here. So I'll be back with another video after I've gotten this I don't know, maybe at least running Windows XP at the very minimum, and then we'll just kind of go from there. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I installed the original CPU that was on that motherboard. I also installed the original RAM, and as you see here, the machine, it is working. It's that one that I've been, messing around with for a bit here. So my plan is to try to upgrade the CPU to as high as possible that this motherboard can support, and the same with the RAM. Strange thing is, though, as I've said once before, is that even though the manual says the motherboard only supports 4 gigs of RAM, I've actually stuck in 8 gigs, and it showed up here. It said total 8 gigs. So I don't know. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to use this CD-ROM connected outside the box because there's no CD-ROM in the front, and this motherboard does not support booting from USB. And yeah, so let's see what happens when I go to install the operating system. Now, I already told the BIOS to boot the CD-ROM first. So it should boot to that CD-ROM drive. My understanding is that this motherboard supports an E6700. But I accidentally bought a 7600 and I installed it in there, and it showed up in the motherboard. I don't know, very strange. This is also the very first time that it's ever sat there on that screen for so long. Oh, there goes the drive. Alright, well, let's see what happens here. So yeah, as I was saying, I installed an E7600 and the motherboard it showed up on the motherboard. It like quote unquote worked. And the same thing with 8 gigs of RAM. Supposedly it only supports 4. I don't know, it's very bizarre. But I'm basically going to attempt to install the highest CPU and the highest amount of RAM that motherboard supports, and upgrade it to, an older, new gaming machine. Well, something's happening. Let's take a look at the computer here. This is going to have fans. This is going to have fans on the top of it. They're not there right now. Right there's another computer that I'm working on. I'll show that one off at another time. Oh, it's still sitting there. Nothing's happening. Oh, oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, it just restarted. Yeah, I don't... Okay. So anyways, yeah, that's another computer that I'm working on that has an AMD in it. It has 2 graphics cards. I'll show it off another time. Let's see, here we go. Again, going to the drive. I imagine that this is not really all that entertaining, and I apologize for that. But we'll get to see together, you know, what's going to happen. I mean, it's attempting to boot to the OS installation media, but I mean, you saw what I mean. You did see there that the little spinny thing came up for a moment, and then it restarted, which is kind of weird. Excuse me. I suppose it's possible there's something wrong with this drive, which that would really suck, and I really hope not. So yeah, when everything is all finally finished, I'll be putting in a red, blue, red fan that were up there originally. You're going to be replacing those. Oh wow, going on 7 minutes here. I don't know why it's taking so long. I mean, other than the fact that it's really old hardware. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. No, oh. It just doesn't want to do it. Okay, well. Alright then. I'm gonna have to try a different... I think what I'm gonna do is burn a different CD. Because the drive is working. I'll be back soon. Okay, so it didn't happen on camera, but I had the very same thing happen that happened before with the screen turning orange with the white lines. And at first I thought it was the old processor that I stuck in there, thinking that maybe because the BIOS wasn't updated that it wasn't supporting it or whatever, which is why I went back to the original hardware that came with this machine. And as you seen a moment ago in the video, the machine was boot looping, trying to load up the media there inside the CD-ROM, DVD-ROM, and it would sometimes almost load up the installation media, but then it would just restart. Well, before I got a chance to pull the disc out, it was trying to load up the media, and I got the orange and white screen like I had once before. So what I decided to do was try a 32-bit operating system. So this is Windows 10 32-bit, where and I thought, you know, I could do if this machine supports 4 gigs of RAM, right? And supports an E6700 processor, which is the dual core, and I'm pretty sure it's a 64-bit dual core. Why wouldn't it support a 64-bit operating system, you know? So that's what I was trying initially, but now I'm trying a 32-bit operating system, Windows 10, the newest version, on the DVD, and we'll see what happens. Well, we're gonna see. Maybe it will load up the operating system and the operating system install, and I'll be able to move forward with installing the OS on this machine. Excuse me. It's kind of crappy if I end up with a 32-bit operating system, because what's the point in putting 4 gigs of RAM in there? I'll end up putting like 3.5 or something. Because literally there's no point in putting any more than that if I'm stuck with a 32-bit operating system. But I don't know. It might take a little while, but what I'm hoping to see is the little spinning circle that, lets you know that you're getting into the installation. Well, things are happening. Now the hard drive light isn't blinking right now because obviously we're not initializing the hard drive any. But it's also green, so there's like the green power light that you can see there, and then there's also a green HDD light. I kind of wish that they had made those different colors instead of also green, but whatever. Like, I know I was trying to work with old hardware, but I used to be able to put newer operating systems on old hardware. Like, for example, I used to put Windows XP on Windows 98 machines and things like that. Windows 7 on Windows XP machines. And I have actually put Windows 10 on a couple of sort of old machines, like this one here. It only has 4 gigs of RAM, and oh, there it is. See? Even with a 32-bit operating system, man. Like I said, I don't really want to get stuck putting Windows 7 on here or Windows XP, because I was really hoping to put a newer operating system on older hardware. I've done it before, but this is the outcome. I don't know why this is happening, because pretty much everything works. All right. I guess back to the drawing board. All right. Excuse me. Okay. All right. So here's another update. I put all of the original hardware together. Everything that had come out of that other case. From the very beginning of all of this. And as you see here, it is running Windows XP. So the computer does work. It just doesn't seem to want to install Windows 10 or something like that. I'm not quite sure. It's weird. I haven't ever run into quite a situation where trying to install an operating system would bring up that orange screen. So what I decided to do was try putting the operating system on this drive that was installed in there inside this other computer here. It's a Dell. It's an older socket 775 Intel machine. So close enough to that Windows 10 might not notice a difference, because I didn't do the complete install. I just started the install, and so when I put this in there and I start the machine up, I'm hoping it'll just pick up from where it left off and finish the install and actually install Windows 10 onto that machine. Because for whatever reason, trying to boot to a Windows 10 operating system on a CD was not working. But the computer does work. Here we are with Windows 10. And I mean, you can see there. So my plan here, like I said, is to pretty much shut this thing down, install the other hard drive, and see what happens. Alright, be back in a bit. Right, so I put that hard drive in to try to boot Windows 10 off of it. And like I said, I had originally started the install on another Intel machine, but I didn't let it finish the install. I just got it to the point where, you know, it would restart and do the install. So it should try and boot into Windows 10 here. See what happens. Oh, see, it tried to boot into Windows 10. I'm at a loss here. I don't understand. And you know, the strangest thing is, I did some research, and online there's a lot of people who have been having random difficulties with this particular motherboard, the P5L D2. But as you saw, it runs Windows XP just fine. So I guess I'm stuck putting Windows 7 on here if I can, or I'm going to try going Linux, I guess, like the most newest Linux possible or something. Because this is ridiculous. It really should run Windows 10, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't. Well, that's that. Thanks for coming along. I guess this calls this, and you know, the end, until I at least figure out a different operating system or something. But this did not pan out well at all. No, it didn't pan out well at all. I mean, it looks nice. It's a sweet, nice little build. But yeah, that's that. Okay, well, I did manage to get it to boot to an SSD after all. I mean, SSD of a flash drive. And look at this. It actually gave me the option. I'm trying to right now install Windows 10 32-bit. Because even though I'm pretty sure that the CPU can handle 64-bit, and supposedly the motherboard can handle up to 4 gigs of RAM, I'm just not certain about the 64-bit operating system, so I'm going to start off with 32-bit, and maybe if I have success, I might try reinstalling it again with 64-bit once I actually have the full 4 gigs of RAM in there. But finally something's happening here. Let's see what happens. I'm not going to have you sit here for the entirety of it all, so I'm probably going to stop the recording now, I guess, and then pick it back up when something happens. But I, at the same time, kind of want to have, I don't know, have you all witness this as well, because, I mean, this just might possibly be success finally, maybe. Imagine that it actually finally works after all the headache. I mean, I don't know. One of the things I don't understand is why I wasn't able to do this very same thing using the DVD drive. And I did do some research about the orange and white lines, and apparently the orange and white lines had something to do with BitLocker, but there's no BitLocker installed on here. So I still have no idea what that was all about and why that was happening. And for all I know, it might still happen even after all of this. I mean, I don't know. This is the furthest I've ever gotten with this machine, though, I'll tell you that. Because I didn't even get this far using the CD-ROM. CD-ROM I kept having issues with. The DVD-ROM, excuse me, the DVD-ROM. But, you know, the thing is, when I very first tried to get this machine to boot to the flash drive, it just wouldn't do it. What I ended up having to do was hit the F8, I think it was, and choose the boot menu and choose the flash drive manually. And here we are. Same machine. No CD-ROM, as you see. A DVD-ROM. Matter of fact, there's the DVD-ROM right there. It's still going. But, you know, again, this is the first time that I've actually gotten this far, so I'm kind of excited now. Imagine if I finally got some success with this damn thing. I'll never be able to figure out why I couldn't load it up with the DVD-ROM, though. If anybody out there happens to know why, feel free to let me know. Now, I mean, this is doing this on a 3 gig Pentium 4 processor and only 1 gig of RAM. And if I can manage to get Windows to install at all, I'll be amazed. I also don't know if the motherboard is having some sort of a trouble getting into the SSD. And like the Windows XP that's installed on a hard drive. And I don't know, I mean, it would be kind of weird that this motherboard supports 4 gigs of RAM and dual cores and the dual core extremes and like other processors and whatnot that they're old to this point in date. But I mean, I'm pretty sure SSDs were a thing when, you know, when this motherboard was in its prime. So I don't understand why it's having such an issue getting into the SSD. He managed to get into the solid state, the flash drive though. Man, this is taking so long. I mean, we're already at 6 minutes here. So, this is a new build. It also has older hardware in it, but not nearly as old as this one here. This is definitely old. And, we'll see what happens. This one right here, it has a AMD 6-core processor in it, and 2 graphic cards, AMD R7 370s, 16 gigs of RAM, It's an okay little build. And it gave me a whole lot less headaches, that's for sure. Oh, I'm getting there. I'm wondering if it needs more than a gig of RAM. I'm not sure. I can put more than a gig of RAM in here. I actually had uh, 2 gig sticks in this, and it seemed like it was working, even though supposedly the motherboard only supports 1 gig dual, 1 gig DIMMs per channel. And I did go looking around. I did find BIOSes, but they weren't. They turned out that they weren't higher than the one that's out, a higher number than the one that's already on here. And there's multiple varieties of this particular motherboard. And the strangest thing is, all the information that I can find are for the other versions of this motherboard, not this one. Like, it's crazy. So I would advise you stay away from this motherboard if you ever feel like they're doing an old build, like a retro build. Don't bother with the P5LD2 or whatever it is here. Wow, 9 minutes in already. And maybe I'll be able to speed this up in like post or something. Oh, but then again, I did do an awful lot of talking. Oh, here we go. Here we go. It's either going to work or it's not. Whoa, I think something's going to happen. I never got this far before. Uh-oh. Oh, oh, oh. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, wow. For a minute there, it popped up the, like that main installation window, but then it did this. Like, I don't know. Man, I really thought that this was gonna work. Crap. Oh, wait. What is this? What is this? Okay, this makes no sense. Okay, I have to put the phone down and stop recording now. See if I can figure this out. No, look. I was just about to stop recording. And here we are. Look at this. Look at this. Okay. Thing is, I still don't know if it's going to get into the SSD. Like, I don't know why it wasn't working with the DVD-ROM. Like, I just don't get it. I don't know. I'm glad I got this far, though. Finally. Alright, I think I'm going to stop this video now. I'll be back with another update. Okay, quick update. So things are happening. My God. Excuse me. It seems like every time I want to talk, I get all like dry throat or something. Anyways, so anyhow, yeah, things are happening. Things are happening. I guess what I'll do is I'll come back when we have Windows actually installed, because I'm pretty sure this is going to take a very, very long time. Oh, it just restarted. Excuse me again. It just restarted right after, you know, the little like screen where it's going down the check marks of setting up files and all that stuff. So this is where it'll begin during the next step of the installation. I'm pretty excited about this. So, sorry about that. I forgot that the news was on in the background. Anyways, I'm pretty excited about this because if you've been following along this entire, I don't know if this is going to be cut up into a series of multiple videos or if I'm just going to do one full long video. But if you've been following along the entirety of this journey here, you'll know that this was quite the headache. And getting to this point is kind of sort of a big deal. And also that this is happening on a 3 gig Pentium 4 processor with 1 gig RAM. Like, ridiculous. And not even DDR2 800, it's like DDR2 533 megahertz, because that's what the motherboard supports. Well, supposedly, according to the manual, but the manual also says other things that doesn't make sense either. For example, the motherboard states that it only supports 1 gig DIMMs, but I had 2 gig DIMMs in there. It states it only supports 4 gigs RAM, but I had 8 in there. And it also states that it only supports up to a 6700, an E6700, but I happen to have an E7600 in there, and it seemed to work, at least getting into the BIOS and stuff. So, I don't know, very confusing motherboard. And also what was going on with the DVD-ROM, I've never seen that before either. And I've installed a lot of Windows onto a lot of machines over the years. So I don't know. This is crazy. But here we are. Let's see what happens next. Oh, and it seems like it's working. We might be able to say that we're getting into Windows, but look how slow it is. It's crazy slow. To be honest, I was kind of wondering how well Pentium 4 processor would handle Windows or the installation. But I was planning on putting a lot more than just 1 gig of RAM in there, so I'd say this is the ultimate bottleneck or something. It's kind of crazy how slow it is. Okay, end this video here for now. Alright. My God, every time, excuse me. Alright, so here we are. It is actually working. So yeah, same computer. And it's working. I'll come back when Windows is finished being updated. Alright, so, oh, excuse me, I don't know why that happens every single time. I try to go to talk. So weird. And yes, I have had a drink of water, so I don't know. Just please excuse me. Okay, here we are. We're in Windows 10 with Pentium 4 processor, 3 gig, hyper-thread, and 1 gig of RAM. Okay, well, that was the biggest pain in the butt I think I've ever had. Now what I want to do is see how much RAM I can actually get this thing to take, and go from there. And hopefully if I can get it to see at least 4 gigs or more, I'm going to put a 64-bit operating system on here, and also upgrade the processor to something better. Finally. Okay, so I guess I'll do one last video when I finally get the last of the hardware set up. Thanks for watching. Alright, so here's another follow-up. The build is quote-unquote complete for right now. It has the original processor, which is a P4 hyper-thread at 3 gigs, and 2 512 sticks of Corsair 5400 DDR2. So I think those run by like 667 megahertz or something like that. I don't really remember right now. But the motherboard itself doesn't support any higher than the 5400s. And as a matter of fact, even when these are in, during the BIOS load up, it actually reads off as a 5300. And maybe that's because that's as high as the motherboard goes as far as RAM. But these are what came with it. It's the same as the processor. I changed the CPU cooler though, because stock Intel coolers suck. And we got the 550 Ti in here again. Mainly for 2 reasons. One, I actually wanted this in here to start out with, which I ended up having to switch. At first I thought the issue might have been with the card or something else within that secure boot or whatever. There may have been some sort of situations with Windows 10 and why I wasn't able to get the install going. So I'd switched back to the old original graphics card that was on here, which is an NVIDIA 256 megabyte, but I know nothing about it. Can't find drivers for it. Windows 10 can't find drivers for it. So we're back to this card, which is fine because it's what I really wanted in it anyhow. In a sense, it kind of makes this blue light up cooler useless now, because initially when I had this in here, it was because the graphics card had a passive cooler on it, so I thought adding some air would be nice. But now, it's got its own fan. And, again, it makes it kind of useless, but it is what it is. I'm not going to take it out now. It's all wired in there. You can see the cable goes down and in, and I'm not going to go through all that to take it out. This is not the same SSD that was on here. This is now a PNY SSD as opposed to the one that was in here to begin with. And the only reason why is because the other SSD, I actually had a match to it. I had 2 of the very same exact SSDs, and that might get used in a different build. Perhaps run them in RAID or something. I don't know. Oh, that's a reflection. Okay. I saw like a yeah, that's a reflection. Okay. I was like, what is going on over there? I thought there was some sort of a mark or something on the paint. And I was like, oh, how did that happen? But no, it's actually like some sort of a reflection because you get close enough and it just disappears. And that's just so weird. I don't know what the heck that even is. Like, what the heck? I don't know how that's happening or why. Oh, it might be oh, I know what's going on here. Never mind. Got it. It's reflecting off of the fan blade. It's like, what the hell is that? Okay, back to what I was saying. So my plan is because I realized after sticking, I put 8 gigs in, all two gig stick DIMMs across the board, and it did in the BIOS show 8 gigs, but it also mentioned how out of that 8 gigs, a certain amount was appropriated and only usable was 3.2 gigs or 3.1, I think is what it said. So then, and it also, when I had the 8 gigs in there, trying to boot into a Windows installed on the flash drive, it couldn't do it. It would boot loop. So I took those 2 sticks out. I took those 4 sticks out, put in 2 sticks of 2 gigs each for 4 gigs, and of course the BIOS could see it as 4 gigs, but stated that there was only 3.2 gigs available of use. So clearly this motherboard maxes out at 3 gigs. And also when you have more than 3 gigs in there, you can't boot into an install disk, or rather flash drive. And that being said, I have the original RAM in here, which only makes us a gig right now. But I got the install on the CD. There is, not CD. I got the install on the SSD, and I didn't end up using that disk. The CD-ROM, the DVD-ROM, I didn't end up using that after all. And I did realize, by the way, part of the problem was also that during boot up, I was originally getting the big screen, the splash screen, which only showed hit tab for post messages or delete to get into the BIOS. It didn't tell you exactly what was the boot menu button until I turned off the splash screen and was able to see all of the post messages. And then one of those post messages said to press F8 for a BBS screen, which turned out to be the boot menu. And then I was able to manually boot into the flash drive, but it was not booting into the flash drive all by itself automatically. I also in the BIOS had to enable 2.0 USB because for whatever reason it was by default disabled. I don't know why. Because when I very first started using this board, I did tell the board to just use, defaults, all defaults, which was like F7 or something. I don't remember. Doesn't matter. So I set the board to defaults, and the USB 2.0 was disabled, which I only found out by digging into the BIOS. So first thing is I turned on 2.0 BIOS, 2.0 USB in the BIOS, and then I realized how to manually boot to the flash drive, and then I was able to get the install going. But trying to do it off of a DVD-ROM with a DVD player was not working. I have no idea what that orange screen was all about. But yeah, here it is, essentially finished. But I am going to be putting in 3 gigs of RAM across the board by using these 2 512s and 2 1 gig sticks that are all going to match. I got the 2 1 gig sticks super cheap, so it wasn't the problem of just picking them up. And I do have intent on putting in an E6700 in here, which is, according to the manual and the website, as of version 2.1G and BIOS number that this one has a higher one of, absolutely supports that processor, so I should have no problem being able to slap that one in and getting a better performance. as opposed to trying to run the Windows 10 on a P4 hyperthread, because it works, you can do it, but it's terrible. So the next video I do will be the updated video of the upgrades, and maybe I'll be able to get some games on here and actually, you know, put the thing to work and see how it goes. I may even attempt some really old games on this as it is right now. Games that were Pentium 4, 3 gig, the era around that same time, and just to see what happens. But I don't think that with the operating system and this horsepower of the graphics card, that, you know, I imagine that this is going to be, that this is going to bottleneck this, because this might ask for more than this is able to put out. Which is one of the main reasons why I wanted to upgrade to a better CPU, because I know that a 1.8 gig Core 2 Duo will run Windows 10 far better than this does right now. But yeah, all the drives are connected. That's the boot drive, and these are two 250 gig drives. I think they're both 7200 RPMs, and there's the 60 gig PATA drive. And on the motherboard, there's really only one more slot to put another drive. So I suppose, you know, one more could go here if you know, ever necessary. But I mean, it has plenty of storage space, so really that won't be necessary. It's just kind of weird to see all this open space here with nothing in it at all. I suppose a RGB controller could go there, or like a fan controller, I suppose, could go there. But you know, it is what it is. It's fine. It's an older build. You know, if you haven't been following along, the entire purpose of this was to do an old build into a new case and do like a flipped sleeper build. And that's pretty much what this is. Alright, until the next video. Okay, so here's one more update. Now I've reconnected an DVD-ROM drive, as you can see there, DVD plus RW. Alright, so I had finally found a website that actually had the drivers for this motherboard. And this motherboard here is like the OG of the P5LD2s, because there's the P5LD2 VM-V -SE, so there's multiple varieties or versions of this motherboard. So going to the Asus website trying to find the drivers and BIOS for this motherboard was not easy, but I finally found them, and I finally found updated drivers as well. BIOS as well as the drivers. And so I learned that one of the BIOS updates actually solves the problem with the high-speed 2.0 being disabled when the motherboard is defaulted, you know, put into system defaults. So that's a fix, and I think maybe there's a couple other things that are addressed, like updated processors and probably getting the full 4 gigs of RAM that's supposed to be available to this motherboard, because as of right now it only supports 3 gigs. So yeah, back to the drawing board here. Going to try and do what I did before, which is get the BIOS to boot to this, but instead of booting to it specifically, what I found out rather, is that when you go into Easy Flash for doing the BIOS, when I originally read up on it, it had stated that the machine only supported flashing via a floppy, via floppy drive, which of course, you know, no floppy here, which means I would have had to connect a floppy some other way, which is really not possible with the way this is set up right now, with all the things that are connected to it. I'd actually more than likely had to pull out the entire motherboard and put it into like an empty case or on a box or something. But I decided just out of curiosity to check the flash. Excuse me, I forgot what I was trying to how I was trying to say that. The Easy Flash, what it supported, whether it was Easy Flash 2 or Easy Flash 1, because Easy Flash 2 will let you flash the system with a flash drive, a thumb drive, you know. So when I went into that setting, it did in fact look for both a floppy and a CD. Now it did say CD, and this here is a DVD because it's all that I have. But I'm figuring that maybe a CD and a DVD-ROM isn't going to matter that much, and I certainly hope so because I only had blank DVDs and a DVD-ROM. So now I'm going to attempt to flash the BIOS to the newest updated BIOS available for this motherboard using that instead of a floppy. And hopefully that works out well. I usually get a little nervous flashing BIOS to a motherboard because it is, you know, possible to mess your board up, but I had looked into it and made sure that, you know, I was getting the right BIOS version and all the things. And I did find the very specific motherboard this time as opposed to the other versions. So this should theoretically just go smoothly. And let's hope that I can get this to update and, you know, with a thumbs up. Let's just hope that that happens. I'll be back. Alright, so now I am taking out the old Pentium 4 and replacing it with an E6700. Originally what I had picked up was an E7600 because I had misread the manual in the CPU list, supported list. But right now it has a 3 gig Pentium 4 processor in it and only 1 gig of DDR2 RAM. And quite honestly, running Windows 10 on that was surprisingly okay. Like, it wasn't a great experience, but this 3 gig Pentium 4 was able to do it with 1 gig of RAM. I was able to install Firefox and Google Chrome. I was able to download programs and install them. I haven't actually utilized them very much. I imagine at some point it would really bog down and get unusable, but for the most part it was relatively usable. So that was surprising. So anyhow, this is the CPU bracket for the Intel, and as I had mentioned once before, in order to get to the CPU, you gotta remove this, and this flips up, but this gets in the way. You can't actually lift up the lid all the way. So I figured since I was taking it out, I would show how it goes in and how it comes out. So this here is the CPU. It's upside down, obviously, but these clips are, good for AMD chips. The FM2, AM3, AM2, it works with those stock brackets on AMD motherboards, which is why it needs that bracket. These here, these little plastic things go inside here. Like that, and you push them, and you push them all the way in to lock it into place. Now, one thing I had noticed is that they're kind of difficult to get back out again, and not terrible, but not that easy to get back out again. And one more thing that's important to note is that these little clips in it, these little plugs right in here, that plastic topper fed into, those basically will lock they have those like little plastic like teeth, sort of like what's on a stock Intel CPU. Okay, so what you do is you place this bracket over those holes and then you slide those in. 1, 2, 3, 4, going diagonal. But I did notice that in order to change this, you can't just lift it up and out, and you really can't get those out either. So what you're supposed to do is kind of take it up one at a time. After having done this a couple times, I realized the best thing to do is to take duct tape and cover these holes with duct tape. Because if not, what happens is when you finally get it to come up, sometimes it comes up real quick, and these pieces just go flying. And losing one of those is terrible. So the best thing to do is to tape it over with some duct tape and kind of seal it off. And then pull it up, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then lift it up and out. And this here is where the cooler clips onto. So yeah, that's how the Antec A30 is installed. I'll come back when the new CPU is in with another update. Thanks for watching. So, real quickly before I end the videos here, we went from a Pentium 4 Hyperthread to a Core 2 E6700. And we went from 5 gigs RAM, 512 megabytes of RAM to 3 gigs. I'm sorry, 2 512 megabytes for a gig to 3 gigs using 2 1 gig sticks. So it's 1.5 and 1.5 per channel for the 3 gigs max that this motherboard supports. And I have it chock full of drives. The disk 0 right there at the top, that's the PATA drive. There's the SSD there and 2 HDDs. Both of those are 250 and the SSD is 240. The PATA is only a 60, but it doesn't matter because you wouldn't really slap too much on that. And one of those drives, during the time that I was using this computer with only 1 gig of RAM, I had set up a virtual partition for virtual RAM. A page file partition, which is the G partition there, I believe it is, yeah, the G. So that partition is 3 gigs, and I, went into the Windows and set it up to use that partition for page filing in addition to what it already was using on the C drive. And I believe that really helped some of the performance during the time that I was using this machine with a Pentium 4 processor and 1 gig RAM. So it's not like, in comparison to today's computers, it's nothing all that special. But looking at it from the, from a point of view of what was originally in this machine to what's in it now and what it's able to do, is definitely an improvement and certainly upgraded. It's also maxed out. The motherboard can't take any more higher of RAM or any faster of a CPU. So I feel good about it. It's been maxed out. It can run a lot of games. I have a ton of games installed on here too, many of which are old, and that was sort of the point, like Doom, Duke Nukem, Unreal, a whole bunch of that kind of stuff. So yeah, there we are. This machine's done, and like I said, I'll do one more video of like just showing it off in the dark. Thanks for watching and following along with all the videos. I will have I'll probably do another quick video over that build right there that I had just finished up a little while ago. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you liked all these videos, give them a thumbs up. If you didn't like them, you know what to do. Give them a thumbs down. And feel free to subscribe. I'll put out some content here and there as I do builds or, come across a problem and I learn how to fix it and things like that. Okay, so here is my final video in this long journey with this computer here. Initially, when I got it, it was in a server case, and a little bit was known about it, that it had a Pentium 4 processor in it, 1 gig RAM, and that was pretty much about it. When I received it, the person didn't know whether it worked or not, and I wasn't sure if it was something with the BIOS, the motherboard specifically, maybe their operating system. I really wasn't sure, so I went through a whole lot of troubleshooting and a variety of steps to try to get the thing running again. And I think I know what happened is the previous owner probably tried to upgrade the operating system to Windows 10, and they were probably doing what I initially tried to do, which was use that DVD-ROM drive. And when I was doing that, I was getting that strange orange and white striped screen, like the orange screen of death, which, you know, I read about, and other people were having different issues with it. Some of them were talking about like BitLockers and stuff like that, which wasn't exactly my problem specifically. This motherboard did need a BIOS update, which took me forever to find. And when I first read about this motherboard and updating the BIOS with the Easy Flash, it had said something about using a floppy drive, and there was no mention of CD-ROM at all. It wasn't until I decided to just load into the BIOS Flash program to see whether or not, you know, what it would do after reading about Easy Flash 2 being able to support flash drives and things like that. This, I was having trouble getting to boot to a flash drive initially anyhow, which is what sent me to the DVD-ROM. Turns out that, one, the USB 2.0 was disabled, and I don't know how that would have affected at least booting into the flash drive, but maybe it did, especially because the flash drive I was using was a 3.0 one, and that may have been an issue there. But also, even after that, I had to manually press, it was like F8 to get into the bootloader options to choose manually what to boot to. Once I was able to do that, I was able to at least get in, you know, the install going from a flash drive, as opposed to trying to use a DVD-ROM. And so, yeah, I feel like that's how this machine ended up being nearly scrapped, is because someone tried to upgrade the operating system and was unable to. So they just put everything back to factory. Well, factory, like just default the way it was. They probably removed whatever RAM they may have tried to upgrade and put it back to what was in here when I got it. Because I'm presuming maybe they read some of the same information I may have, which was that this motherboard was supposed to support 4 gigs of RAM, and it actually only supports 3, which is just weird because it has a 64-bit operating ability to run a 64-bit processor, which should, you know, obviously handle a 64-bit operating system. But there'd be no point at all in putting in a 64-bit operating system when the motherboard here only sees 3 gigs of RAM. So that wasn't going to work. I mean, obviously, you know, I could go 32-bit, which is what I did. But getting to that point was a nightmare. I really couldn't figure out why it was working, but yet not. It was bizarre, because once I got everything connected into this case here, with the original processor, and the original hard drive, and, you know, RAM, all that stuff, I was finally able to boot into the Windows XP that was on this machine. So it was functioning, just not well. It needed the BIOS update, and you had to install Windows from a flash drive and not a DVD-ROM. Although, admittingly, I didn't try doing it again after doing the BIOS update. Maybe the DVD-ROM would have worked then. I don't know. But I preferred going flash drive anyways. It's much faster than optical drive would be. So, here we are. It's finally finished. This is the last video in what I would guess is a series. I'm assuming I'll end up uploading these videos individually into like a playlist. I might try mashing a couple of them together to make like a longer video as opposed to some short ones. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But here we go. We'll turn it on one last time. And I do intend... Oh, yeah, I gotta actually turn the power on. That would help, wouldn't it? Let's get down here. Oh... This isn't usually this complicated. Normally it's a lot easier to reach. Alright. So what I do find interesting is, at least from my point of view here on my camera from the phone, is that these lights appear light blue, like a bluish green, almost like aqua. There we go. Anyhow, they're actually quite green. Like, to the human eye, on the other side of, you know, without a camera, they'd look green. But when I look at this computer right now through the camera, I see like a bluish green. It's really bizarre. Anyhow, this here is the finished computer. Finished product. I did talk about this one over here in another video, how I worked on this one doing something similar-esque but with newer hardware. Newer than this hardware anyways. This one here was really about beautifying, you know, older hardware and doing like a sleeper build except in reverse, you know. But yeah. The lighting is much more appreciated in a dark room. I have my light on right now, so I mean, you know, some of it's kind of washed out a little bit, I guess. Let's see if we can loop around here. Yeah, so I mean, you can still see what the colors look like and stuff, but not nearly as nice as, you know, when the lights are out, of course. Anyhow, I do intend on doing like a quote-unquote B-roll. A B-roll of the computer with, you know, like the lights out and just taking videos and pictures of what it looks like in the dark. So anyhow, we're gonna do one real quick like, I guess, demo here real fast. We'll pull up a game. And I guess what we'll do here, you know what, we'll run the benchmark for fear. Oh, while we're waiting for that to kind of load up a second here, I mean, it's almost done. There it comes. There it is right there. Anyways, I also really like the back, how the USBs light up. It's pretty cool. And I didn't even really do that intentionally, but yeah, I like that. Alright, so. Alright. I believe it's under here. There we go. I had already, as you might be able to see there, I've already got it set to custom. Pretty much everything was within medium to high. I mean, it's only a 1 gig graphics card anyhow. But yeah, I think I actually can't recall exactly the settings anymore, but I know it's within medium to high. And the last time I tested the settings, we got like 60 frames per second minimum with like 140 or something max. I don't remember anymore. And yeah, I mean, you know, this game was able to push the limits of some computers, but not as hard as, like, you know, some newer games. But sure enough, it's still a nice little benchmark for what we've got going on here. Alright, here we go. Oh, minimum 57. Last time it said 60. Maximum 323. Average 141. Those numbers are slightly different than the first time, not by much. Maybe there's something running in the background for a moment there. I don't know, but last time I got 60 frames per second minimum. And I mean, really, 57 to 60, that's like margin of error. But, yeah. And I mean, you know, I guess it's not really saying that much, considering the age of the game. But then again, I mean, it's almost around the time that the hardware in this had come out, I believe. Yes, you know, ish. Anyways, I mean, it's possible that the game even came out after some of this hardware. It's hard for me to recall. And now I'm just kind of rambling. So anyways, yeah, there we are. That's this machine in action and working, from old to quote-unquote new, with some newer stuff put in it, like a newer SSD and a new 3.0 USB port, you know, for the front header and the back there. And yeah. Well, anyways, there we go, and thanks for watching.